doing what I love and being in loving community. And so doing what I love professionally, I really love working with my colleagues, other teachers, school leaders, being part of this whole California initiative to support social emotional learning within the context of cognitive learning, and then also really thinking about well-being. How do we have schools as centers of well-being? And so that gives me a lot of purpose and meaning, and that's living well for me, is having purpose and meaning.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Reflections on Living Well podcast, where we explore perspectives on the good life in the 21st century. I am your host, Broderick Rodell. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Reflections on Living Well podcast. Today, our guest is Wendy Baron. Wendy is a teacher, author, coach, researcher, and leader in the field of social, emotional, and academic development. She co-founded the Santa Cruz Silicon Valley New Teacher Project and New Teacher Center, a national nonprofit dedicated to improving student learning by accelerating the effectiveness of teachers and school leaders. Wendy served as Chief Academic Officer and leader of social and emotional learning at New Teacher Center, with an emphasis on creating cultures of belonging that are inclusive and culturally responsive. In 2018, Wendy began co-leading the California statewide social emotional learning communities of practice. Currently, Wendy works with district and school leaders, counselors, mental health clinicians, and community partners in Santa Cruz, California, supporting a systems approach to social, emotional, academic development, and transforming schools as centers of well-being. Hi, Wendy.
That's a mouthful. Hi, Broderick. Great to see you, and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you here. I'm excited to talk with you with such a background in social emotional learning and stressing well-being to educators and students alike. And I'm sure, I suspect that that type of work has had a significant influence on your perspective on what living well means. But in the beginning, I even though I read that bio, I still like guests to share a little bit about themselves and how you feel about yourself beyond all of the accomplishments.
Oh, thank you. Yes, when I was thinking about this, I know we often identify with our roles, and I like to identify with who I am. And so I see myself as an ever-growing person, a learner, ever evolving. I am pretty adventurous. I'm a risk taker. I strive to be kind and compassionate and curious. It's really important for me to just be open-hearted and open-minded. And I think of listening as one of my superpowers. And there's something that supports me every day in kind of becoming who I am and this ever evolving person throughout my life. And if you'll indulge me, I'll just share it with you. And it's joyful, energetic body, loving, compassionate heart, reflective, alert mind, lightness of being. Yeah.
Those are great. Those are great. Those are great to aspire to. For me, hearing that, I'm like, oh, that's very interesting. That's nice. I love how you said that listening was your superpower. I know we spoke before about possibly coming onto the podcast, and you mentioned that you were reading David Brooks' book, How to Know a Person,
Hmm.
and a common theme or a central theme in that book was listening. Can you say a little bit more about why listening, how listening is your superpower, and what's the benefit of listening?
Thank you. Um, well, I think about it maybe in two ways. One is listening to myself and kind of tuning into my intuition. How am I feeling about something? What is my body saying? What are my thoughts about it? How am I feeling about something? So before I take an action, I try and listen internally. And then listening to others has been, uh, I think of it as an art and a mindfulness practice. And it's really grown, I think, by being an educator, listening to my students. What do they want and need? I was a teacher that always asked for their feedback and then was responsive to what their needs are. And then when I began working with new teachers in the Santa Cruz Silicon Valley New Teacher Project, mentoring is coaching, and we really honed our skills as listeners. And what I learned about that was to quiet the inner dialogue and to really trust that I could understand, take in what a teacher was sharing with me and be able to respond and reflect back what they were saying so that they really felt seen, heard, and valued. And what I learned from that was that people really don't need suggestions. You know, if you're really listening and reflecting back, that they they have their own answers and just kind of needed to hear it. And that's been really a powerful learning. So being a coach to me was one of the roles that I felt like, oh man, I really am supporting people, and that felt so meaningful and purposeful to me. And then I started learning about how to be a facilitator and be able to have like a group listen to one another and reflect with one another and go back and forth and build on each other's ideas and take on different perspectives and advocate and come to consensus. And what, how do you really support group process? So I think those things go together, and there's something about listening and facilitating and having, whether it was my own students or whether it's school leaders or educators or counselors, whoever I'm working with, or my friends. I mean, they all know me as in this way also. Um, I think what happens is we develop deeper, more connected, trusting relationships that are very satisfying and fulfilling. And then we know that we have each other's backs. We can really be there for one another, which kind of that feeling of support is very nourishing and calming. And I don't know what else is there in life, but to know that you're really connected with others and yourself. I think I started with that.
That's awesome. Well, what a superpower to have because, as you mentioned, there's a lots of advantages to being able to do that, to hold that space for yourself, uh, and to hold that for others, where they feel like someone is actually listening to them, where they felt heard.
Mm,
We tend to reveal when someone holds that container for us. We tend to reveal more of ourselves. We begin to unpack our story in a way that's not that's hard to do when we don't have someone with an open heart listening to us
mm,
deeply. So what a
mm,
gift you have there.
mm.
um, I like to also begin, around the beginning of this, asking the question, what does living well mean to you? And then from the rest of this, for the rest of this conversation, we will unpack that.
Okay. Well, for me,
Mhm.
as I thought about it, preparing for this, it narrowed down to doing what I love and being in loving community. And so, doing what I love professionally, I really love working with my colleagues, other teachers, school leaders, being part of this whole California initiative to support social emotional learning within the context of cognitive learning, and then also really thinking about well-being. How do we have schools as centers of well-being? And so that gives me a lot of purpose and meaning, and that's living well for me, is having purpose and meaning. And then also in my personal life, just having this close-knit community with my own family, my husband and our sons and our grandkids and our really good friends, where we do so much together. We're out in nature hiking and mountain biking and skiing and kayaking and looking at visiting each other's gardens and going to events
Mm.
together. Um, it also, for me, means having an inner calm. So I really notice when I'm anxious or I'm irritated or I'm having a negative thought about something or a judgment, or maybe I've said something in a harsh tone of voice, which I, can do, human. And so for me, being quick to notice, be aware, and repair relationships is really important. Noticing if I'm directing that inward and being able to reframe negative self talk and support myself in having a more positive, optimistic self talk. That's really important to me. Or reframing things that have happened into, what did I learn from this? What can I take from this? So trying not to reject things in my life. How can I accept them and learn from them and move forward? Being generous, being responsible, being timely, being trying to do my best. Those are all things that help me to live in alignment with my values, that makes me feel calm, like I'm not having to repair too much. The other thing about living a good life for me, or is really following my heart, tapping into my own intuition. What 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 would bring me joy? What are my boundaries that I need to set? Do I really want this or not? I remember learning from a friend in our women's group. I've been part of a women's group for like 28 years now. We meet every Thursday still. And it's pretty amazing. And our partners join us once a month. So we really do stay pretty deeply connected. But in this case, just even in decision making, thinking about having two doors and fully walking into one door and living that experience of, what would that be like? How would that feel? What would that look like? What am I thinking? Coming back out, brushing that off, walking through the other door, living that experience. How am I feeling? What am I thinking? What would that experience be like? By the time I come out and just settle with it, I pretty much know what my intuition is saying would be the best thing in this moment, even if it's a hard thing, like saying something to someone. So, and that's kind of how I try and live my life, is being in tune with myself and being in tune with others and having that balance. Yeah.
Back to listening, huh?
Back to listening. Yes. Yes.
That deep,
Yes.
deep listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, shining, yeah, being aware and sensitive to your experience, your inner world. and that requires a certain amount of deep listening in order to do that, and
Hmm.
of course listening with others as well. So you said I think a lot of what you said is very comprehensive, and I hope we unpack more of that as we go along. There's one thing I know. There's other pieces I'm definitely going to bring to light, but I do want to shine a light on community because that's a common theme that has come up, and you seem to express that it's such a central, important piece of the puzzle for you. The joy that you expressed with being with your friends, your family,
Hmm.
being with at work, the work that you're doing, that's community. All those are relational spaces that you find yourself in. Can you say a little bit more about the value and importance of community and living well?
Yes. Well, of course, there's so much research on the value of relationships in terms of health and well-being, as well as longevity, as well as really disease prevention. That loneliness is a big predictor of, um, how long you live and how well you live. So I know there's a lot of research on it. I was involved in a research study with the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence in 2018, where we surveyed about 7,000 teachers and learned that their top three emotions were stress, overwhelm, and frustration. And yet, when we checked in about their health and well being factors, the greatest predictor of their well being was if they were in trusting, connected relationships with their colleagues, with their administrator, and with their students, and if their students were in positive relationships with one another. You can only imagine if there's challenges at a school site in terms of student behavior, that is going to be very stressful for a teacher, right? So it's for
Mhm.
all of our benefit to cultivate cultures of belonging and inclusion and connection and relationship. So I know that, and I've experienced that, and I've experienced it throughout my life with just deepening friendships. I think that being able to bring people together, I don't know, there's the two parts of me of um, liking one-on-one relationships and then also liking this community that gets its own level of synergy and its own dynamic that happens. And a lot for me is starts with just really having questions that are deep, meaningful questions. Like even in our women's group, we'll say, okay, what should be our theme for tonight? Well, let's talk about love, or let's talk about, patience, or let's talk about, we'll come up with a theme and then we'll all share what's the meaning around this for me. And we'll, work with each other and ask each other questions to go deeper about that. And that is very fulfilling. And it's also super fulfilling to have folks over for, an afternoon, make food together, have dinner together, and end up dancing or meet for a hike for a birthday celebration. So I love the one on one. And I also love the community. And I think I've learned to be a facilitator of groups and might be somebody who, if it's going off into just people telling stories on a superficial level, I might be the one that says, well, so how did you feel about that? What was important to you about that? And, just to drop it down another level or two so that we really connect on a human level.
That's great. You're right. There's all this research out there that's indicative of um, well-being, that reflects well-being in when we are in relationships, when we have, I'll use the word loving relationships. when we feel connected to others. Yeah, that's definitely, the science is pretty clear on that. But then also we all just know, we know in our own personal lives that when we have those interactions with those that we resonate with, that we connect with deeply, there's something spacious about that. There's something joyful about that. There's
Mm.
something healing and therapeutic about that, for sure. When we have those uh, profound interactions with other human beings. Now, I interviewed someone earlier, and they mentioned that, they reminded me, like, well, even when you have two people, that's still community.
Oh, I
Even when
love
you
that.
are interact with another person, there's community.
Mm.
And I'm like, yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it as well. That yes, it is actually,
Yeah.
because we're given that opportunity to kind of step outside of our personal selves and be a witness to someone else's experience, or to really unpack our experience in ways that we would not have been able to do alone,
Ah, I
which
love
is all
that.
beneficial. I guess because we do, right? We gain insight when we are able to fully express our story. Um, we learn something about ourselves, because it's hard to see your story
Right.
unless you are very good at self-reflection, and you've well practiced at self-reflection. You're very good at asking yourself very good questions. It's hard to do that alone, but when you have another person or multiple persons doing that, that's just beautiful. That's great, because it brings out of you a deeper understanding of yourself, and also a deeper understanding of others, and the
Mm.
potential for connecting and relating to others. I love that you've been in a women's group for 26 years, 27 years. That's
28.
amazing.
We're on
Oh,
28.
28, 28.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That's fascinating.
Yes.
That's just great. Can you? I know you delve into it a little bit more, but specifically, can you say a little bit more about that experience and what that does for you, to have that group of women that you've been sharing space with for 28 years weekly? It's
I
amazing.
know it really is very, very amazing and transformative. I want to say in the beginning, my friends asked me to start a women's group. And I said, yeah, I'll start it. And then we're going to have to co lead it after a certain amount of time. So, I basically brought the ideas of, listening and deep listening and, refraining from just staying on the surface with a story and going deeper into, well, how does it make you feel? What are your thoughts around it? And then facilitating that. And how do you facilitate? So after a few months, then we just started trading who is going to be the facilitator for that group, which brought me so much joy because I really like building capacity in others. I'm an educator, I'm a teacher. I don't want to just be sage on the stage. I want everybody to be engaged and involved and lead and co-lead and, have it be really dynamic. So what's super fun about that is different women will bring different things to the group. Like it might be like Brene Brown's book. It might be the Atlas of the Heart, and why don't we, read about a particular emotion and talk about that? Or somebody might bring a video that they just saw, or a theme that they want to talk about. So that is really fun for me, that everybody kind of expresses themselves through what they bring to the group. And then we typically will do a check-in, and if somebody has something that is really troubling them or is a concern, we all just turn our attention to that person. So I always know that I can get support if I need support, and they're not going to try and fix me. They're not going to just, like throw suggestions that, okay, you should do this, you should do that. That we really trust that the person has the answers within. And if we're really good reflective listeners, and if we ask authentic questions that are from a place of curiosity or a place of understanding some of our patterns from the past, that the person will be able to come to their own thinking about it and movement forward. And then it was a few years ago when we thought, oh, let's bring the guys in for a once a month, like let's do 3 weeks, the women only, and 1 week with the guys. And that has been amazing because it's really improved all of our relationships because the couples can talk about couple things that go on. And how many couples actually get support from other couples, or it might just be my thing. And, my husband is also supporting me and hearing how other people are seeing something. So that's when I say I'm kind of ever evolving because I don't know. I just keep evolving and growing and learning. And the feedback that we've given each other is that we're all becoming more open hearted and more caring and kind, and our communication skills have improved so much with one another and with in our dynamic relationships that boy, it is so gratifying. I just love, like, our group is happening tonight. We meet every Thursday, 5:30 to 7. And when COVID started, we started on Zoom, and, nothing could keep us down. So,
Just good stuff there. It's just, yeah, that's just something good to know. I mean, that's not just something good to know, but that's just, I'm just over here feeling so happy for you. I feel a joy vicariously, like, oh, that sounds so great. What a
yeah,
good life. A part of a good life is, yeah, how you just articulated that. I don't, it's hard to say anything beyond that. I think that was just beautiful how you said it, and I love how you brought in the husbands, the partners, after all these years, and they're into it. I
yeah.
mean, that's great.
And when
That's
we
just
meet,
amazing.
they meet themselves when we meet now, when we're like, they'll
Oh,
meet at
okay.
the beach,
Wow,
yeah. So they keep it going too. It's hilarious. Not hilarious, funny,
this is
but
great.
just like surprising.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
so good. Yeah. And also you mentioned, wow, I just love that. I can just keep talking about that. But you also mentioned another thing about community interactions. Um, so you just mentioned how it has increased your openness. It basically increased your well-being, your capacity to deeply understand one another, all of that good stuff. And also, you mentioned something earlier too about how it's just fun getting together and doing stuff with other people, having fun with each other. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Having getting together, having dinner, playing games together. That's just such a. I think there's so much meaning in that. That
Mm,
it's, yes, it's fun, but there's something deeper that's happening there when we allow ourselves to engage in pleasurable experiences with a community of people. Yeah, really. Yeah, we can. It doesn't have to be, okay, we're going to get together and let's work through all our dramas and let's
right.
do the hard therapeutic work.
Right.
Oh, you can get
Right.
together and also enjoy and have fun. It
Yeah.
sounds like to me, from the outside, you describing your women's group, that it's fun doing that as well. So you can find fun in working through stuff and having deep, meaningful conversations. It's good
Yeah.
stuff, Wendy.
Thank you.
Yeah. You also mentioned earlier that the very first thing you mentioned is doing what you love. Can you elaborate? Can you say a little bit more about doing what you love, influences your capacity to live a good life?
Yeah. So I was reflecting on this too, that I was very fortunate that when I was a stressed out teenager trying to get good grades and get into a college, which my parents really wanted me to do, um, I found meditation. And meditation kind of set me on a path of a habit of going inside and just getting quiet and being aware of awareness and quieting that inner dialogue. And then I found yoga soon after that, which I really took to also. I wasn't super athletic as a young kid. I was really loved being in nature. We lived near a woods. And so my brother and I would often go on the trails and go hiking and, find frogs and, be out in just finding things in nature, the birds and whatnot. So I, um, I think those three things really came together for me, the meditation and the yoga and being in nature. And that kind of set me on a course of, well, where do I want to live? And so I moved to Santa Cruz, which was a very, I have the redwoods right here. I'm close to the Sierra. So I was really able to develop my ability to hike, and I started cross country skiing and then learned to downhill ski and then met somebody who introduced me to mountain biking, and I found I actually love moving in nature. And so that was really important to me. And then at 17, also, that was a pretty crucial age for me. I was a camp counselor at a day camp, and we took the kids to a fish hatchery. We were watching all the fish in all the tanks and whatnot. And then we sat down for lunch, and I had a tuna sandwich, and I was like, oh, wait, it was the first time I made a connection between what I was eating and a live animal. And I became a vegetarian at that moment. And that was pretty hard in the day because just imagine I was traveling cross country to come to Santa Cruz. Really, there was just grilled cheese sandwiches that you could get along the way. But once I got to Santa Cruz, I learned about tofu and all these healthy foods that I could eat. And so nutrition became a passion for me of, well, how can I be healthy with my body, and how can I move in nature and take care of my nutrition as well? So those things kind of have all come together over my life. When you were mentioning about my work in schools with schools as centers of well-being, I think about it as physical, emotional, relational, and mental well-being. And you can't, it's whole child education. So I think of it as whole person well-being, and how can I do the things that really do enrich my life and make me feel healthy. And, our friends, we cook together a lot, and we're all kind of on the health, like what's healthy? What can we do to really age in a healthy way and keep our bodies young and vibrant? So my day is really, I do start with a meditation, a mindfulness practice, and I do some yoga and strength training, and then I work. I'm always have some project for work. And it might be in person with teachers or school leaders, or it might be online, or might be I'm preparing something. And then likely I'm gonna go out with the dog for a walk and um, go to the redwoods, and or go on a bike ride, or go say hi to some neighbors. So, like, every day is kind of building these small habits, or do a project. My husband and I, we have 3 acres, so we garden a lot, and we take care of our plants, and there's always something to fix. So we're always fixing something. So, we kind of are, I don't know, we have this little rhythm in life, and we have a little sprinter van that we got that we might just take a week and just be free and just not know where we're going and see where the wind blows us. So I'm kind of eclectic when you think about, like, what is it, how does it show up in your life? it's very eclectic.
Yeah, diversity of things, and you found to just, yeah, those things that you love to do. You found those things, and you just you act on them. And so again, it comes back to your capacity to deeply listen, because a lot of us are not aware of those things that we love. But there's something else that you're doing too. Not only are you listening, but you have a, it appears that you have this willingness to act on it. It's like you engage your agency. And
Mm.
like, and I guess you did mention this. You did mention that you like to experiment. So it's a part of your personality. You're like, oh, that's interesting, and then you go and you experiment with this thing that is brought to your awareness, and you're willing to go and try. Um, can you say a little more about that? The importance of agency and actually acting on uh, an interest that you may have to see if it's something that you are passionate about.
Yeah, that is interesting. And I have to say my mother really was my biggest influence in life because
Mm,
she really took risks in terms of um, she was the first she was she loved being an administrative secretary, and she was doing that for work back in the day. You know, she was born in 1919, and
mm,
so there weren't too many opportunities for women. Only one daughter in the family could go to college, and it was her sister who became a teacher. So she was an executive administrator. And one of her bosses said, "You're too smart to do this. You could be a financial advisor. I want to support you to go back to school and get your certification." She was the first woman financial advisor in the country.
wow.
And man, that was tough because I would go in to her office after school and all the secretaries were in the front of the office. And I'd look to find my mom, and there she'd be in her pink suit with her red hair among a sea of men with their black and navy blue and brown suits. And she just like, she went for it. And she would always say, "You can do it, Wendy. Just do it. Just put your mind to it and just do it." And so she was my cheerleader. And since she passed away at 101 a couple of years ago,
Wow.
I've had to become my own cheerleader. But she's in my head of, if you think it, you can do it. Just imagine it. Imagine how you're going to feel when it happens, and let go of how it's going to happen, and just trust that you're moving towards it. And then usually I look in the rearview mirror and go, "Wow, it actually happened. And here I am on the other side of that." It's kind of magical. So, but I really attribute it to my mom, who showed me the way, and she was a role model and a trailblazer. And she and her two sisters didn't take it from anyone. They were like, their maiden name is Fight, F-E-I-T, and they'd be like, "We're the Fight Girls." And and so all of us women in our family are like, "Yeah, we're the Fight Girls." So, you know,
Sure.
so I fight for the environment. I fight for kindness. I want to say something that the way when people talk harshly about other people, it's painful. And so,
Yeah.
whether it's students or whether it's political leaders or anybody, that is why I'm in this work of social and emotional learning, is just trying to really have us develop the ability to see each other and see our interconnectedness, and talk to each other with respect and kindness. And my mother really, really taught me that. She was just so generous of heart and kind spirited and compassionate. And yet she was tough. You can like be both. She had her ideals and values and beliefs and was in a man's world, and she was the manager of an exchange. And yeah. So anyway, I would hear the stories, and so you could do it. You can keep your good character, and you can still make it in the world.
Again, having a role model, having a person that's close to you in your community to support you and encourage you. Again, another lesson in why having others around us is so important, to
Yeah,
get that encouragement to help us activate our agency.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and it's an important piece of the puzzle. Yes, not only do we need to listen deeply to ourselves, but also figuring out how to act on it. How
Mm,
do we act on the things that we are discovering about ourselves through deeply listening to ourselves?
mm.
So there's this other aspect of that, this part where as we listen, we experience a lot of pain. And I guess this is, it can tie into some of the social emotional learning stuff that you've done. That a lot of us are filled with so much pain and hurt. So if there's a listener out there that's saying that, yeah, well, that's easy for you to say. It's really hard for me to listen to all this inner pain, and it's really hard to engage my agency because I feel like I am inadequate, or I feel like I'm depressed. I feel like the world is working against me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What do you say about that? What would you say to a person that may respond to what you just said and say, well, that's easy for you, but this is really difficult for me? Well, how would you respond?
Yeah, that is such an important question and exploration. And I think, all of us have a negativity bias, right? And so where
Mm-hmm.
our brains are basically wired to keep us safe. And so we notice every little thing that we do wrong, every micro something that's not perfect about us, whether it's our physical looks or whether it's our abilities, our mental abilities, our physical abilities, maybe our culture, our race, our religion. I mean, we can be so self critical because what's so important is to be part of a tribe, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
what we were basically, that was our survival. So the most important thing is to fit in and be part of our tribe, which is why I'm so passionate about creating inclusive environments where everyone feels a sense of belonging and it's diverse, right? It's like we accept and respect and are curious and want to understand other people's thinking and where they're coming from. So I too have a lot of self criticism and worries and will I be liked or accepted? And I can totally understand, especially if you're from culture, non dominant culture, you've had experiences in your life that are really difficult. And what I can say is that our emotions and thoughts are important to pay attention to. And they're giving us messages. And so we need to listen to them. And if we are sad, we need to be sad. If we're scared, we need to be scared. And if we're feeling less than, we need to notice that. And then I would say, which is the really big learning I've had through working with Mark Brackett and the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, is how do you regulate those emotions? Because we have them. And also Byron Katie with her 4 questions. I'll start with her because I saw her at Wisdom 2.0 and this really landed for me, of asking yourself, is it true? Is that thought that you're having about yourself true? Is it absolutely true? Do you know it to be a fact? Are you really incompetent at that? Are you really, less than? Are you really whatever? And how are you feeling with that thought? And how would you feel and who would you be without that thought? And just those four reflective questions, when you write those down, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this to myself. Wow. I'm like taking the arrow and really digging it into myself. Nobody else is really doing it, or I'm allowing them to do it. And so now, what's the counter to that? And the counter is reframing that negative self talk into more positive, optimistic self talk. And I even do it in things like, this is ridiculous, but I might be going somewhere where I'm scared and I'll be saying to myself, I'm safe. I'm safe. And so instead of constantly saying, I'm scared, I'm really anxious, I'm in a place that, I will still be aware that I'm giving myself the message that I'm safe so I can calm my nervous system down. So we want to regulate, and sometimes rhythm will help regulate, reframing will help regulate. So we want to regulate and relate. So talking to somebody, getting some support will help us regulate. Movement will help us regulate. So it's what can we do to support our own self-awareness? How am I feeling? What am I thinking? How is that impacting what I might do, my actions? Can I put a pause in it? Can I breathe a little bit? Can I reflect? Okay, now what's one of my strategies I can use? Let me put a little perspective in this. Okay, let's take a 30,000-foot view of this. Or let's take the other person's perspective. Or, so I just have a variety of strategies that I try and use. And they might not work for you, or something else might work for you. I just am supporting the idea of what will help you regulate those emotions if you're feeling high energy and a high level of unpleasant emotions like anger, irritation, frustration, or if you're feeling a low level of energy and unpleasant emotions like sadness and grief. Like, what could be some things? And with grief, you have to feel it, you have to go through it. Sadness, you have to feel it and go through it. But you might have somebody you can relate to. You might put on some music and dance a little bit. You might listen to a podcast like this, like you. What can support you? How can you help yourself? Yeah. How can you be your own best
Oh,
friend? It's like self-compassion. I'll just finish with
yeah.
self-compassion. There's these three aspects, and the first is realizing how you're feeling is common humanity. There's other people in the world that are feeling the same emotion or having a similar experience. And then noticing, what is that emotion? How are you feeling? Can you label it? And then what would you say to a friend if they were telling you this experience and how they were feeling? Now turn it around and say that to yourself. So,
Oh, I love it all. I think I love it.
oh,
I'm so glad I asked that question because that's it. Because sometimes if someone may hear some of this stuff about, oh yeah, listen deeply to yourself and then do all these things. But I think what you just spelled out just now kind of unpacks all of that. So you listen deeply so you can discover what's
mm-hmm,
there. You're
mm-hmm,
not trying to deny what's there. You're discovering what's there. You're going to discover these patterns of habits of mind that may be limiting us from living the life that we could potentially live. And so, what we have to do is from that discovery, from self observation or therapy, when someone is there listening for you, or a friend, when someone can hold that space to listen for you as you unpack your narrative, your story. And I think how I would sum up a lot of the things that you said is you got to have some tools. You got
right.
to have some tools to help you better understand the situation that you're in and also help you. I like that reframe the situation that you're in and see can you find a way out of that situation. that we are not beholding to our past experiences or our traumas, that we don't have to be stuck there. We
Right.
can overcome those things that are limiting our capacity to live well. And that requires a pathway of education, learning about the various tools out there to help one better understand their story, but also transform that story. We have the capacity to rewrite our story.
Mm.
And those suggestions that you just made are just some of the ones that can be applied to our ruminations, our self-exploration. And
Yes.
yeah, we can apply our agency. I think the agency begins with that awareness. You, by choosing to, I'm going to hold myself
Mm.
and allow my mind to unpack. That
Mm.
requires some form of agency. You have to choose to do that, because there's plenty of us in our culture that numb ourselves, that refuse to listen
Right.
to the things that are going on in our minds. So choosing right there, because I've heard people say this, like, I don't have the willpower. I don't have the willpower that you have. I'm like,
Mhm.
well, start with something,
Right.
some little thing, and then acknowledge, like, the fact that you are choosing to look, to observe, that you're choosing to ask the question, yet you're choosing to be interested in yourself.
Mm.
It may be small, but that's a subtle uh, action that you're taking, that you're engaging your agency, you're engaging your will to do that thing. Now, figuring out a way, how do I extend or expand my action?
Mm.
How do I expand my will to do more in this process of, I keep saying, self-exploration, and I guess rewriting our story. But yeah, a lot of those things that you just mentioned are tools that one can use to put ourselves in a situation that is much more conducive to a life well lived. And
Mm.
we're not saying that it's easy. It's just that these are some of the things that one can do to help make it possible. Does that make
Mm.
sense what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I think you just put a beautiful summary on just what I'm trying to express and how just what my journey has been. And I think we need to close on this because what I forgot to tell you was I'm facilitating a group of 30 educators in a community of practice in 5 more minutes. And so I'm gonna I'm gonna need to go. And our
Okay,
community of
yeah, yes.
practice is called Growing Your Heart Skills with Dr. Larea Martinez, who sometime you might want to
Mhm.
interview also because she's amazing. And yeah, it's just around this whole thing. The first thing is honor your emotions. She teaches the heart skills, so honor your emotions is the first one. And then the second is, which is today's, elect your responses. And so you have
Mm.
to elect how do you want to respond to your emotions? So this is kind of like the perfect closure. Just put a little
Oh.
pause in it and
Nice. This has been great. I think I've enjoyed this conversation. There's so many things. There are so many things that you brought up. Yeah, you revealed so many different tools. I think listeners just might have to listen to this one more than one time, because there's so many pieces of the puzzle that are conducive to a good life,
mm,
that we can learn and take from your experiences and the work that you've done.
thank you.
I know that was you mentioned closing there. Is there any final words that you would like to leave for the audience before we sign off?
Well, I guess to those who are parents out there or educators, counselors, organizations that support well-being in families, I think what I've come to see as most important is modeling and 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 having an opportunity for children to be able to express how they're feeling and to really have them feel seen, heard, and valued, and teach them how to repair relationships. I think one of the things my husband and I landed on, which works for us so well, is sometimes we can't process the whole thing of what happened and why did it happen and who's right and who's wrong. We just say, let's have a do-over. And we just do it over from our best selves. And that just like makes us laugh and go, okay, now we've repaired it. So repairing relationships and helping your children be able to honor their own emotions and express their emotions, and in a couple or with your friends or in your community, just that's like key. Yeah. Okay. I think that's
Awesome.
it.
All right.
And do
Thank
what
you
you
so
love.
much.
Do what you love.
I
Yeah. Roderick, thank you for
love it.
inviting me. This has just been like such an amazing opportunity for me to reflect on my life and to connect with you. I'm so appreciative and thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. This has been great. I appreciate you. And until next time.
Okay. All right. Big heart.
Thank you so much for tuning into the show. I hope this conversation has inspired you to reflect on your own views of the good life. If you enjoyed the show and want to hear more inspiring and thought-provoking conversations, please follow, write a review, and rate us on your favorite podcast app. If you are tuning in on YouTube, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support is very much appreciated.